I think I didn't do anything wrong, just told the truth during a silly game. Now I'm holding a thick envelope of legal papers, my friends whisper about me, and my husband has vanished from my life in one clean, perfect move. I never thought a joke could cost me everything. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The private back room at Romano's buzzed with laughter and clinking wine glasses. I adjusted my new dress, the red one that made me feel alive again, and surveyed our little group. Owen sat beside me, methodically cutting his chicken parmesan, while my sister Cara gestured wildly, telling some story about her latest client. His mother Doreen picked at her salad, occasionally glancing at me with that tight smile she'd perfected over 7 years of marriage. Okay, Brian called out, raising his beer. Truth or dare time. Come on, we're not teenagers anymore, but we can still have fun. I felt a familiar thrill. This was exactly what I needed. Something spontaneous. Something that reminded me I was more than just Owen's wife or Ella's mother. At 32, I deserved to feel desired, to be the center of attention for once. I'll start, I announced, surprising myself with my boldness. Truth. Cara grinned. Safe choice, sis. What's the wildest thing you've ever done at work? I thought about Mark, his easy smile, the way he leaned against my desk when asking about insurance policies, how his fingers had brushed mine last week when he handed me coffee. Well, there was this one time I processed a claim while wearing no. Next question, Owen interrupted, his ears reddening. Everyone laughed, but I caught the warning in his voice. The game continued around the table. Brian dared Doreen to text her ex-boyfriend. She refused. Cara admitted she'd never actually read a book she'd recommended to her book club. When it circled back to me, I chose dare. I dare you, Brian said, his words slightly slurred, to answer honestly, would you leave Owen for $100? The table went quiet. I could feel Owen's body tense beside me, could practically hear his internal accountant calculating the implications of the question. But something rebellious flared in my chest. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the way Mark had looked at me that afternoon when he said I seemed underappreciated. Honestly? I laughed, tossing my hair. Maybe. I mean, $100 is $100, right? The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Doreen's fork clinked against her plate. Cara's mouth fell open. Owen's hand, which had been resting on my thigh, slowly withdrew. Damaris, Owen said quietly, that's not funny. Oh, come on, I said, nudging him with my elbow. It's just a joke. You're being way too sensitive. This is supposed to be fun. You know, that thing people do when they're not buried in spreadsheets all day. I looked around the table for support, but found only uncomfortable faces. Ruth, my mother, who'd been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. She's just being playful, Owen. You know how Damaris gets when she's had a little wine. But Owen wasn't laughing. He wasn't even looking at me. Instead, he was studying his hands, that methodical way he approached everything, like he was calculating something important. Maybe we should call it a night, Doreen said, already reaching for her purse. The disapproval radiated from her in waves. No, wait, I protested. We're having fun. Owen, tell them you know I was joking. He looked at me then, and something in his expression made my stomach flutter, not in the good way. Was it a joke, Damaris? The question hung in the air like smoke. I forced another laugh. Of course it was. God, you really don't know how to have fun anymore, do you? The drive home was suffocating in its silence. Owen's hands gripped the steering wheel at perfect 10 and 2 positions, his jaw working like he was chewing words he wouldn't say. I pulled out my phone and typed quickly to Mark. That was so awkward. Some people just can't take a joke. I hit send before I thought better of it. When I glanced over, Owen's jaw had gone even tighter, his eyes flicking toward my phone's glow before returning to the road. The insurance office felt like a refuge Monday morning. Mark's desk sat diagonally across from mine, and I found myself stealing glances at him while he worked. He had this way of running his fingers through his dark hair when he was concentrating that made my pulse quicken. "Rough weekend?" he asked during our coffee break, leaning against the break room counter in that casual way that made him seem so different from Owen's rigid posture. "You could say that," I sighed, letting my fingers brush his when he handed me a sugar packet. "My husband doesn't appreciate my sense of humor." Mark's smile was warm, understanding. "His loss? You're one of the most interesting people here, Damaris. He should know how lucky he is." The compliment settled in my chest like warm honey. When was the last time Owen had called me interesting? When was the last time he'd looked at me like I was something worth appreciating instead of just another item on his endless to-do list? At home, Owen had become a ghost of himself. He still made coffee in the morning, still helped Ella with her homework, still paid the bills with his characteristic precision. But he'd stopped really looking at me. When I tried to kiss him goodbye, he turned his cheek. When I suggested we watch our usual show, he claimed he had work to finish. "You're being ridiculous," I told him Thursday night as he loaded the dishwasher with mathematical precision. "It was one stupid joke at a dinner party." "Was it?" he asked without looking up. "Yes. God, Owen, you're acting paranoid. It's like you don't trust me anymore." He paused, a plate halfway to the rack. "Should I?" The question hit like a slap. "I can't believe you just asked me that. I'm your wife, the mother of your child, and you're treating me like I'm some kind of criminal because of one silly comment." I called Kara that night, tears streaming down my face. "He's pushing me away," I sobbed into the phone. "He won't talk to me, won't touch me. I feel like I'm living with a stranger." "Damaris," Kara said carefully, "maybe you should think about why he's upset. That comment really hurt him. It was a joke." Was it, though? Because from where I was sitting, it didn't feel like one. I hung up, frustrated. Nobody understood what it was like to feel invisible in your own marriage, to crave something more than the endless routine of work, dinner, sleep, repeat. Mark understood. When he texted me that night, "Hope you're okay. You seemed stressed today," I felt seen in a way I hadn't in months. The texting became a daily thing. Then coffee breaks stretched longer. Then Mark started staying late when I did, helping me with cases that didn't really need two people. The first time he kissed me, pressed against the supply closet door after everyone else had gone home, I told myself it didn't mean anything. It was just attention, just someone appreciating me for once. "Working late again?" Owen asked when I came home at 9:30, my lips still tingling. "Big case," I said, not quite meeting his eyes. "The Morrison claim is more complicated than we thought." He nodded, but I caught him making a note in his phone. Probably adding it to his mental catalogue of my schedule, the same way he tracked our expenses and Ella's activities. Everything in Owen's world had to be documented, organized, controlled. That night, I lay awake listening to him breathe, feeling the careful distance he maintained even in sleep. I'd pushed him away, I realized, but wasn't that what I wanted? Space to figure out what I actually needed. When I checked my phone, there was a message from Mark. "Sweet dreams. Beautiful." I typed back quickly, "You too," then deleted it before I could change my mind. But I didn't delete it fast enough. In the dim glow of my phone screen, I caught Owen's reflection in the dresser mirror. His eyes were open, watching me, and his expression was so carefully blank, it made my blood run cold. The next morning, I found him at his laptop earlier than usual, typing with the focused intensity he usually reserved for tax season. When I tried to see what he was working on, he closed it smoothly. "Just work stuff," he said, but something in his voice suggested otherwise. Doreen's dining room felt smaller than usual, crowded with tension and the smell of her famous pot roast. I'd dressed carefully. The blue sweater Owen used to say brought out my eyes, my hair styled the way he'd once called perfect. I wanted tonight to work. I wanted us to feel like a family again. This looks amazing, Mom, Owen said, helping his mother bring dishes to the table. He'd been different lately, not angry exactly, but distant in a way that made me feel like I was watching him through glass. Ella, put your phone away, I said, trying to inject some normalcy into my voice. Our 7-year-old had been quieter lately, more clingy. She kept asking why Daddy was sleeping in the guest room, why we didn't laugh at dinner anymore. But Mom, Sarah's mom said she might get a puppy and... Phone away, Owen said gently, and Ella obeyed immediately. She always listened to him better than me, something that had started to sting more than it should. Brian carved the roast with unnecessary precision, the knife scraping against the plate. Cara made small talk about her work, but her eyes kept darting between Owen and me, like she was waiting for something to explode. I was trying to compliment Doreen's potatoes when my phone buzzed. A text from Mark, "Missing you today. That blue sweater is my favorite." Heat crept up my neck. How did he know what I was wearing? Then I remembered. I'd sent him a quick selfie earlier, asking if I looked okay for family dinner. It had seemed harmless at the time. I should have ignored it. Should have put my phone face down and focused on the conversation. Instead, I found myself typing back, "Missing you too. This is torture." Damaris, Owen's voice cut through my focus. "Brian asked you a question." I looked up, flustered. "Sorry, what?" "I asked how work was going," Brian said, but his tone suggested he already disapproved of whatever my answer might be. "Oh, fine. Busy. You know how insurance can be." I laughed, but it sounded forced even to me. My phone buzzed again. "Mark, want to meet up later? I know a place we could talk." This time I was more careful, angling the phone away from Owen. But when I glanced up, I caught Doreen watching me with sharp eyes. "Must be important," she said coolly. "Just work stuff," I said, echoing Owen's usual response. "You know how it is." "Actually, I don't," Doreen replied. "In my day, family dinner meant family came first." The criticism stung, especially because she wasn't wrong. But instead of apologizing, I felt myself getting defensive. Well, some of us don't have the luxury of being retired. Some of us have to work for a living. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Brian set down his fork with a sharp clink. Cara closed her eyes like she was praying for patience. "Damaris," Owen said quietly. "That was uncalled for." "What?" "I'm just saying that not everyone can turn off their phone at 6 p.m. and pretend the world stops spinning." "You're being controlling," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "You're making everyone uncomfortable with this attitude. I'm trying to have a nice dinner with your family, and you're acting like I committed some crime by checking my phone." Ella's fork clattered to her plate. "Why is everyone fighting again?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Everyone was fighting. It had become our new normal, this careful dance around each other's anger. "We're not fighting, sweetheart," I said, reaching for her hand. "We're just having a discussion." But Owen was already standing, his napkin placed precisely beside his plate. "Actually, we are fighting," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "And Ella shouldn't have to listen to it." "Owen," Doreen started, but he was already moving toward the door. "Thank you for dinner, Mum. Damaris, bring Ella home when you're ready." He left without looking back, and the silence he left behind was deafening. "Well," Ruth said finally, "that was dramatic." But Doreen wasn't having it. "That man has been nothing but patient with you," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed anger. "And you sit at my table ignoring your family, playing with your phone like a teenager. What's wrong with you?" "Nothing's wrong with me," I snapped back. "Maybe something's wrong with everyone else. Maybe I'm the only one who's not pretending everything is perfect when it's not." Cara finally spoke up. "Damaris, you're the one making it not perfect." I looked around the table, at Doreen's disappointed face, at Brian's obvious disgust, at Kara's exhausted expression, at Ella's confused tears. They were all against me, all taking Owen's side without even trying to understand my perspective. "Fine," I said, standing abruptly. "Come on, Ella. Apparently we're not welcome here." The drive home was quiet, except for Ella's sniffles. When we got to the house, Owen's car wasn't in the driveway. I found myself checking my phone immediately. No response from Mark to my earlier text. Inside, I headed straight for Owen's laptop, which he'd left open on the kitchen counter. The screen was locked, but when I moved the mouse, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A folder on the desktop labeled DMR Evidence. DMR, Damaris Marcello Rivas. My hand shook as I tried to open it, but it was password protected. How long had he been collecting evidence? What kind of evidence? When Owen came home 2 hours later, I was waiting in the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. "We need to talk," I said. He looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "No, Damaris, we really don't." And for the first time in our marriage, I realized I might not be in control of this situation at all. I found Owen in the guest room at midnight, sitting on the edge of the narrow bed with his laptop open. The blue glow illuminated his face, making him look like a stranger, focused and determined, in a way I'd never seen before. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway. He didn't look up. "Working." "At midnight? On what? Does it matter?" His fingers continued typing, each keystroke deliberate and final. I stepped into the room, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. "Owen, this is ridiculous. We're married. We have a daughter. You can't just shut me out because of one stupid dinner party comment." Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were different. Not angry, not hurt, just empty. Like he'd used up all his emotions and had nothing left for me. "Is that what you think this is about? One comment?" "Isn't it?" But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. This was about Mark, about the late nights, about the way I'd been pulling away from our marriage for months. But admitting that felt impossible. Owen closed the laptop with a soft click. "How long, Damaris?" My heart stopped. "How long what? How long have you been seeing him?" The question hung between us like a blade. I could lie. I was good at lying, had been doing it for weeks. But something in Owen's voice suggested he already knew the answer. "I don't know what you're talking about." He smiled then, but it wasn't a happy expression. "Okay, let's try a different approach. Where were you last Tuesday, when you said you were working late on the Morrison case?" "I was working late. I told you." "The Morrison case was settled 3 weeks ago, Damaris. I called your office. You left at 5:30. The room tilted. How did he know that? How long had he been checking up on me? "You called my office? Owen, that's insane. You're acting like some kind of stalker." "I'm acting like a husband whose wife has been lying to him for months." I felt cornered, desperate. "You're being paranoid. This is exactly why I can't talk to you anymore. You turn everything into some kind of interrogation." "Where were you Tuesday night?" "I told you I was—" "You were at the Marriott downtown, room 412, with Marcello Rivas." The words hit me like physical blows. How could he possibly know that? Mark and I had been so careful, so discreet. We'd only met at the hotel twice, and we'd used— "You're following me." The accusation came out as a whisper. "I don't have to follow you. You're not as clever as you think you are." I sank onto the chair by the window, my legs suddenly unsteady. "Owen, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear the explanation for why my wife has been having an affair for 3 months while telling me I'm paranoid for noticing." 3 months. He thought it had been going on for 3 months. In reality, Mark and I had only been physical for 6 weeks, but I wasn't about to correct Owen's timeline. "It's not what you think," I said weakly. "What is it then?" I looked at him, really looked. He was still my husband, still the man who brought me coffee every morning and remembered to buy the expensive shampoo I liked. But he was also a stranger, someone who had been quietly gathering evidence while I thought I was getting away with everything. "It's not an affair," I said finally. It's just attention. Someone who sees me as more than just a wife and mother. So it is about the $100. What? At dinner, when you said you'd leave me for $100, you meant it. No, But the protest died in my throat. Maybe I had meant it. Maybe I'd been looking for an exit strategy without even realizing it. I want you to know, Owen said, standing up, that I don't hate you. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done. The word hit me like ice water. Done with what? Done pretending this marriage is something it isn't. Done being married to someone who sees me as an obstacle to her happiness instead of a partner. That's not true, I said, but it sounded hollow even to me. Isn't it? When was the last time you looked at me and felt anything other than irritation? When was the last time you chose me over anything else? I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came. Because he was right, and we both knew it. I'm going to stay at my mother's for a while, he said. We both need space to figure out what comes next. What about Ella? What about her? You think she hasn't noticed that her parents can barely stand to be in the same room? You think she doesn't hear us fighting, doesn't see you checking your phone every 5 minutes? Guilt crashed over me in waves. She's fine. Kids are resilient. She asked me yesterday if it was her fault that Mommy and Daddy don't love each other anymore. The words were like a physical blow. She didn't say that. She did. And I had to lie to her, Damaris. I had to tell her that sometimes grown-ups go through hard times, but it's not her fault. But the truth is, it is someone's fault. It's yours. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to make him understand that this wasn't all on me. But looking at his face, tired and disappointed, and completely finished with me, I realized that maybe it was. Owen, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Mark. We can go to counseling. You'll end things with Mark? He laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Damaris, Mark ended things with you 2 days ago. He's been avoiding your calls. The humiliation was complete. Not only had my husband been watching me self-destruct, but my affair partner had already moved on, leaving me with nothing. How do you know that? But Owen was already packing a bag, moving with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. I know a lot of things, Damaris, more than you think. I watched him pack, feeling like I was observing the end of my life from outside my body. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to be in control, supposed to be the one making decisions about our future. What happens now? I asked. Owen zipped his suitcase and looked at me one last time. Now you get what you wanted. Freedom. He left that night, and I woke up the next morning to find the house empty except for Ella, who was unusually quiet over breakfast. When I went to make coffee, I found an envelope on the kitchen counter with my name written in Owen's precise handwriting. Inside were copies of text messages, hotel receipts, and a business card for a divorce attorney. At the bottom, in Owen's careful script, I hope he was worth it. The law office of Henderson and Associates felt like a mausoleum, all dark wood and heavy silence. I sat across from Patricia Henderson, trying to project confidence, while my world crumbled around me. The envelope Owen had left contained more evidence than I'd thought possible. Screenshots of every text I'd sent Mark, credit card receipts from our hotel meetings, even GPS data from my phone showing exactly where I'd been when I claimed to be working late. How is this legal? I asked, my voice higher than I intended. He was spying on me. That has to be some kind of violation. Patricia, a sharp-faced woman in her 50s, looked at me with barely concealed disdain. Mrs. Vane, everything here was obtained legally. Your husband had access to your shared phone plan, your joint credit card statements, and your family computer. There's nothing illegal about a spouse checking these things. But he was tracking me. He was documenting a pattern of deception and adultery, which I have to tell you, he's done very thoroughly. I stared at the papers spread across her desk, my entire affair, laid out in black and white, time-stamped and organized with Owen's characteristic attention to detail. There were things here I'd forgotten about. A lunch with Mark that had gone too long, a work conference that had never existed, even a receipt from Victoria's Secret for lingerie Owen had never seen. "What does he want?" I asked. Patricia consulted her notes. "Primary custody of your daughter, the house, and a division of assets that reflects the money you spent on your extracurricular activities. He's also requesting that you cover your own legal fees." The room spun. "He can't take Ella from me. I'm her mother." "You're also an adulterous spouse who lied repeatedly to your family. Mr. Vane has documented evidence that your behavior has already begun affecting your daughter's emotional well-being." "That's not true." But even as I said it, I remembered Ella's questions, her tears at Doreen's house, the way she'd started clinging to Owen more and more. Maybe my behavior had affected her. Maybe she'd sensed the tension, the lies, the growing distance between her parents. I left the lawyer's office feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My phone had been buzzing all morning, missed calls from Cara, from my mother, from people whose numbers I didn't recognize. When I finally listened to the voicemails, I understood why. "Damaris, it's Mom. I just got a very upsetting call from Doreen. We need to talk immediately." "Sis, what the hell is going on?" "Brian says Owen has evidence of an affair. Call me back." The worst was from my boss at the insurance agency. "Damaris, we need to discuss your relationship with Mr. Rivas and whether it's created a conflict of interest with our clients. Please come in first thing Monday." Owen hadn't just gathered evidence, he'd shared it, strategically, methodically, with exactly the right people to cause maximum damage to my life. I tried calling Mark, desperate for someone to understand my side of the story, but his phone went straight to voicemail. When I drove by his apartment, his car wasn't there. I later learned from a coworker that he'd requested an immediate transfer to our Phoenix office. He'd disappeared from my life as quickly as he'd entered it, leaving me to face the consequences alone. That evening, Cara showed up at my door with a bottle of wine and a grim expression. "Okay," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "Talk." I broke down completely, sobbing out the whole story. The loneliness in my marriage, the excitement of Mark's attention, the way Owen had become distant and controlling. I painted myself as the victim, a neglected wife who'd made one mistake and was now being crucified for it. But Cara wasn't buying it. 3 months, Damaris. You lied to all of us for 3 months. It wasn't 3 months of lying. Yes, it was. Every time you said you were working late, every time you made Owen look paranoid for questioning you, every time you acted like the victim when he was just trying to save his marriage. You lied to me, to Mum, to your own daughter. I felt the familiar surge of defensive anger. You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage. Owen stopped seeing me as a person. I was just another responsibility to manage. So you cheated on him instead of talking to him about it. I tried talking to him. He wouldn't listen. When? When did you try? The question stumped me. When had I tried to have a real conversation with Owen about our problems? When had I suggested counseling, or asked for what I needed, or made any effort to fix things before running to another man? It doesn't matter now, I said finally. He's destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, my relationship with his family. He's trying to take my daughter away from me. Maybe, Cara said quietly. He's just trying to protect her. The words hit like a slap. From what? From me? From this? From the fighting and the lying and the drama? Ella's 7, Damaris. She shouldn't have to worry about whether her parents love each other. I wanted to argue, to make Cara understand that I was the wronged party here. But looking at my sister's disappointed face, I realized that maybe I was the only one who saw it that way. The next morning brought a registered letter that made everything worse. Owen wasn't just asking for a separation, he was filing for divorce. The petition was thorough and damning, laying out a case for adultery, emotional abandonment, and behavior detrimental to their minor child. Attached was a custody evaluation request and a list of witnesses who would testify to my pattern of deceptive behavior and emotional unavailability. The list included Doreen, Brian, even Cara. At the bottom, in Owen's careful handwriting, was a note. I tried to save our marriage. You chose to end it. Now I'm choosing to save our daughter. The family court waiting area smelled like disinfectant and desperation. I sat on a hard plastic chair, watching Owen across the room as he reviewed documents with his attorney. He looked different, thinner, maybe, but also more focused, like he'd found his purpose in dismantling our marriage with the same precision he brought to tax returns. My own lawyer, a public defender named James Chen, shuffled through papers with the weary efficiency of someone who'd seen too many cases like mine. The evidence is extensive, he said quietly. Your husband documented everything. Hotel receipts, text messages, even GPS data from your phone. How is that not stalking? Because you're married and he had legal access to your shared accounts. Mrs. Vane, I have to be honest. This is not a strong position. Your best bet is to negotiate for joint custody and hope the judge is feeling generous. Across the room, Owen's attorney was showing him something on a tablet. I caught a glimpse of the screen and felt sick. It was a photo of Mark and me leaving the Marriott, taken from what looked like a security camera. How had Owen gotten that? All rise for the Honorable Judge Martinez. The next hour was a masterclass in humiliation. Owen's attorney methodically presented evidence of my affair. Text messages where I complained about my husband to my lover. Credit card charges for hotels and dinners I'd lied about. Even a recording of a voicemail I'd left Mark where I said I wished I could just disappear from this life. Your Honor, Owen's lawyer said, Mr. Vane has documented a pattern of deception, adultery, and emotional abandonment that has already begun affecting the minor child. The child's teacher reports that Ella has been anxious and distracted in class, often asking why her parents fight so much. I wanted to object, to explain that the fighting was Owen's fault, that he'd been the one pulling away first. But when my lawyer tried to present my side, it sounded pathetic even to me. Mrs. Vane was feeling neglected in her marriage, Chen argued weakly. She made a mistake, but that doesn't make her an unfit mother. Judge Martinez, a stern woman with graying hair, looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Vane, do you have anything to say for yourself? I stood on shaking legs. This was my chance to explain, to make them understand that I wasn't a monster, just a woman who'd made some bad choices. Your Honor, I love my daughter more than anything. Yes, I made mistakes in my marriage, but I never meant for Ella to be hurt by them. My husband, he stopped seeing me, stopped appreciating me. I felt invisible in my own home. When someone finally paid attention to me, I wasn't strong enough to walk away. So you lied to your family for months instead. I was trying to figure things out. I never meant for it to go so far. But it did go far, didn't it? You had a 3-month affair while lying to everyone who cared about you. I felt tears starting and let them come, hoping they might generate some sympathy. I know I made mistakes, but I'm still Ella's mother. She needs me. Judge Martinez consulted her notes. Mrs. Vane, I've reviewed the evidence, including testimony from family members and your daughter's school counselor. While I don't doubt that you love your daughter, your recent behavior shows a pattern of deception and poor judgment that concerns me. The gavel came down like a death sentence. Owen was awarded primary custody. I got supervised visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week. The house went to Owen, along with most of our assets. I was ordered to pay child support and my own legal fees. In the hallway afterward, Owen approached me while I sat crying on a bench. For a moment, I thought he might comfort me, might show some of the compassion that had made me fall in love with him years ago. Instead, he handed me another envelope. What's this? I asked. Copies of everything I submitted to the court. I thought you should have them for your records. I looked up at him, this man I'd been married to for 7 years, and saw a stranger. You really hate me, don't you? No, he said quietly. I don't hate you, Damaris. but I don't trust you and I can't forgive you. More importantly, I won't let you hurt Ella the way you hurt me." He walked away, leaving me alone with an envelope full of evidence of my own destruction. That evening, I sat in my new studio apartment, all I could afford after the divorce settlement, and finally opened the envelope. Inside were not just the court documents, but printed copies of every text I'd sent Mark, every lie I'd told, every moment of betrayal documented in Owen's careful handwriting. At the very bottom was a single sheet of paper with a timeline. March 15th, truth or dare, comment about leaving for $100. March the 18th, first suspicious late work night. March 27th, first hotel receipt with Mr. April. 3. Ella asks why Mommy and Daddy don't laugh anymore. April 15th, D claims to be working on settled Morrison case. May 2nd, Ella's teacher reports behavioral changes. May 10th, final hotel meeting with Mr. May 12th, confrontation and separation. At the bottom, Owen had written, "I tried to save our marriage until I realized you'd already ended it. I hope someday you understand what you threw away." I crumpled the paper and threw it across the room, but the words echoed in my empty apartment. Maybe I did understand what I'd thrown away. Maybe I'd understood it all along. But understanding and accepting are two different things, and as I sat alone in my studio apartment, surrounded by the wreckage of my own making, I still couldn't shake the feeling that somehow everyone else was wrong and I was the victim here. After all, I'd only told the truth during a silly game.